Hi everyone and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with me and Welsh. Today's conversation is another interesting one. I'm talking to Sophia. She's also a sickle cell warrior, but has used her challenges to overcome so much. Meet her. Welcome again to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. As I previously told you, today's guest is someone who blows me away. Meet Sophia. Hi, and guess what? She's all the way in Australia, and we've managed our time differences very well. How are you?
I'm very good, Anne. Thank you so much for having me on the show and for taking the time out. It is about 6 o'clock in the afternoon here in South Australia. So I'm very fortunate that we've managed to tee up our time because I know.
People always ask, how do you do the show with people all around the world? It's like, you just have to make it happen. And even if it has to be very early in the morning, you just have to do it. Or even if sometimes if I'm doing people in the United States or wherever, whatever part of the world, I just have to fit within their schedule. I've done a call out, because of they were working and they were working all day. So I've had to do a call at 1 a.m. in my time. And then it's because it's so worth it. I haven't even noticed the time difference. All I just know is that I need to talk to that person at no matter what time it is of the day. But I'm really honored to have you join me on this conversation because I was really taken back by your story of just your story of sickle cell. But I didn't want to tell that story myself. From my point of view, I wanted you to share this story. Could you just tell us a little bit about your life and who you are?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, my name is Sophia Anna. I was originally born in the United Kingdom, so a little hospital called St. Mary's.
Yeah, in London.
Yeah, in London, and moved to Australia at the age of 13 to be closer to our family over here. So I have my grandparents here in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of background, my mum is from Greek heritage and dad is from a place called Guyana in South America next to Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Very multicultural, and we basically moved to Australia to be closer to my family and for a better life, really, because at the time in England in the 90s, things were a little bit rough, and my dad made the consecutive decision to bring me somewhere where he knew that I wouldn't get caught up in, there was a lot of school drama and at that time crime. We lived in Brixton at the time. Which
at the time, it's changed so much.
It has.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
It's very upmarket now, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I was born with sickle beta thalassemia. The thalassemia trait was inherited from my mother, and the sickle cell trait was inherited from dad. So that's caused quite a few complications over the years, but it's also given me a strength that I wasn't aware that I had prior.
Wow. Yeah. So do you know what age you were diagnosed with sickle cell beta thalassemia?
Yes, so I was diagnosed, well, my mum knew that I had sickle cell. There could be a chance that I could be carrying sickle cell anemia in the womb. The doctor said to her there's a 1 in 4 chance, and actually gave her the option to go down the other road, and she decided not to.
Yeah.
And when I was born, I didn't have any sickling crises until about 6 months. And I think that's purely because the fetal blood protected me.
Wow.
So I was about 6 months when I experienced my first crisis.
Wow. And for anyone who don't know, you and I know very much what sickle cell beta thalassemia. I personally know what sickle cell is, but I don't know what the beta thalassemia is to it. So are you able to tell us a little bit about it? But if you can't, it's fine.
So basically it's to do with the genetic sequence of the cell structure. So
Mm-hmm.
whereas you have sickle cell anemia, which is the full condition, sickle beta thalassemia is two traits that are combined together. I don't know the specific genetic combination as such, but I do know it involves sickle cell anemia and beta thalassemia, and together combined can cause what's called sickle beta thalassemia. It's two different genetic sequences which combine to create this condition, which is very, very similar to sickle cell in that it can present with the same symptoms. So things
So
like crisis.
yeah, you do get
Yeah.
crisis and all, pain.
Yes.
You have to go to for regular hospital appointments, and or are you in hospital as well with this?
Yes. So with my particular condition, I spent a majority of my childhood quite sick. So I was in and out of hospital as a little girl. I didn't get to have much of an education because of that. And it was very kind of ameliorative therapy in that obviously there was no cure at the time and there still isn't. So it was really about combating that pain and ensuring that I had enough hydration. So lots of drips. I remember being on morphine for a lot of my childhood because the crises were quite severe. My earliest memories is not being able to walk. So being on morphine around the clock, and just, I remember hallucinating as a 6-year-old child. And then obviously as I got older, blood transfusions became an option. In the 90s, it was quite a laborious process. So you'd have a big machine and you'd be hooked up to a huge machine and it would take about 6 hours to transfuse you. Obviously, times have come ahead a lot now. Yeah, so a lot of transfusions, a lot of pain relief and analgesia. And now that I'm an adult, thankfully here in Australia, we're offered what's called a blood exchange. And that is where your red cells are taken out of your body. So 1.5 litres of your own blood is replaced with 1.5 litres of a donor's blood. And that ensures that I don't have crises like someone that didn't have that available would. And it means that I'm able to lead a semi-normal existence for those 4 weeks. And then when my hemoglobin levels deplete again and my sickle cell count rises, that's when I start to feel anemic and start to have crises, and it becomes more of an issue.
For me, I was on the same treatment as you were, where I was giving blood every 4 weeks. But then one time I went in for my blood treatment. I came back, I started weeing blood, and they've not seen that before. And at first I was thinking, well, this is just normal, Then you keep drinking, and the same thing keeps happening. And then I had to go. I called my mum right away and said, "Mum, I think I'm peeing blood." She said, "Okay, do you want to do it in a container?" And then she saw it. She freaked out. She just couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe that I was actually passing out blood. And we rushed out to the hospital, and they said, your body's rejecting the blood. I don't know in your case if you've experienced that, and because I think it's also to do with matches of the blood you receive. So if the blood is a match, but it's also called the antibody match as well. If you have that issue, there's a chance, if the antibody do not match your blood very, very accurately, there's a chance that you might one day start rejecting blood. So do you get ever nervous, or do they ever teach you about that condition of where you could reject blood if after a while, if you keep taking blood and the match is not there?
Yes, absolutely. That's thank you for sharing that, Anne. That is a very frightening reality, and I think something that a lot of people, when they go and have a blood transfusion, they don't necessarily think about because it becomes so routine.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That is definitely something that the haematology team that takes care of me is strictly aware of. So here in Australia, we have what's called an antibody screening. Okay. So every time I have a blood test, I receive an antibody screening and a specific cross match to my blood type. And of course, there's always that risk of potentially having an allergic reaction to something within the blood, or a byproduct of the blood. That has happened in the past where I've gotten quite itchy and erupted in hives, and have experienced that. And that's combated with antihistamines and having an infusion of caltrate during the procedure.
Yeah.
But having said that, I do have to consent to having the procedure once a year. So a doctor will come in and explain to me that, of course, there is a possibility that I could potentially have a reaction, and do I consent to going ahead with it? So from a legal standpoint, the liability is kind of not there as much because I've been informed of the risk.
Oh.
So I'm aware of it, but it's not something that impacts my consciousness, if you will, every time I go in.
Okay. No, that's really good though. Yeah, because mine, it just means that now I can't really take blood transfusions. I just have to manage my sickle cell without the blood change. So it's okay, because then it forces you to look at life a different method, like using other alternative medicine, which is, for me, I've chosen lifestyle. My lifestyle is very, very on point. I always think about what goes into my mouth, what I eat, and exercises and drinking a lot. And those three things are my key to survival right now. This whole thing is about overcoming living with challenging situations. So this whole platform, I started it because I wanted people to share their stories. Because when people hear that we have a chronic illness, or it could be pain of education, for example, going to school, how that challenging was that for you? I want you to share a good story. It could be, I don't want it to be too positive. I want you to share a story of something that you've overcome. How was the education side for you? How was dating? Have you had an experience of that negativity, and were you able to find laughter at the end of it?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, Anne, and thank you so much for asking it, because I think something that we don't address enough is the positivity out of our condition.
Yeah.
And everyone's so focused on the diagnosis that you can really lose yourself as a woman in that. And that is definitely something I experienced. I experienced it quite early on in life. So when I was 13, I was diagnosed with avascular necrosis of the hip. Now, for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's a condition where from sickle cell crises, the oxygen is starved to a particular area in the body, which in my case is my hip bone, femoral joint, and the bone collapses and deteriorates. So it's a very painful condition that can lead to arthritis, and necrosis just basically means bone death. So I experienced avascular necrosis of the hip at 13. And I experienced my first week of high school in a wheelchair. Now, for any young girl at that age who's, navigating life and maybe the dating circle and falling in love for the first time, it was a very different reality for me. And at the time, I just met my first boyfriend. We had a long distance relationship. It was very, very innocent. And he didn't know anything about this. And we were together for about 5 years. And in those 5 years, he experienced what it was like to be awake with me while I was having a sickling crisis, and seeing me in those vulnerable situations when I couldn't walk. And that can be very emotionally challenging for a young woman who's trying to explore her sexuality and find herself. For myself, it was very, very challenging. And it was really only in my early to mid-20s when I started to realize that my illness and my disability does not need to affect my sexuality and affect how I feel about myself. And what I mean by that is, because I've walked with a limp for so long, I can't wear heels like a normal woman. And our culture is so obsessed with, how you look and how you present yourself, that when you do have something that affects the way you walk and gets so much attention from other people in a negative way. I mean, I've had comments like, why are you walking that way? Why are you limping? What's wrong with you? And I've really had to overcome those internal stigmas that we tell ourselves when faced with that kind of situation. And I've had to encompass and embody the fact that it's okay that I might not have a perfect catwalk walk. It's just the way I am, and I have to love that, because that's a part of who I am.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I love that, because it's all about embracing acceptance. I mean, once you start accepting that even that person who's walking perfectly might have their own challenges as well, or it's just that unfortunately you don't see it. Once you start accepting that, it gets a lot better, and you know, you're able to navigate your own calling, your own direction, where the world is taking you to. But what also fascinates me is that you're such a gorgeous girl as well, and you also do amazing things. So I wanted to know, how did you find the strength to look away from what your disability is, illness or invisible illness is, and to still thrive in this world? You know, you're doing great, you do amazing work, which I'm so fascinated about. Just how did you do that? How did you find the courage to move on?
I think I stopped seeing my illness as a threat.
Mm,
I stopped seeing sickle cell and avascular necrosis as the enemy, as something to fight against. Sometimes, at least for myself, I feel like when you live with sickle cell anemia, it's like having a dark force inside of you. You never know when it's going to take over. You never know when it's going to affect your life, and it can be debilitating. But I stopped resisting against that urge to be normal or follow the normal path. I went back to university as a mature age student while my peers were becoming professionals in their areas of expertise. I started to pursue my writing and my modeling, which are things that I'm really passionate about. But
mm,
aside from that, I wanted to encompass sickle cell anemia on a platform that could help other people like myself. And
yeah,
that's where the Sick Sexy came about, was a YouTube platform that I created to basically destigmatize what it means to be sick. Because I think the way we can overcome our struggles is to realize that some struggles may be with you for a lifetime, but they don't necessarily need to be struggles as such. So I've just learned to reframe the way I look at illness and the way I look at disability, and see that there can actually be strength there, and
oh,
there is beauty and strength in that struggle.
oh wow, yeah. No, I agree. Because a lot of people I've talked to have been so positive about finding their own strength, whatever it, you know, whatever it, your own thing lies, find it. In Australia, how is sickle cell? Are there many sickle cell patients? How is it? Or are they, how is the treatment? For example, if someone living here wants to go to Australia, what should we expect with treatments in Australia? So at least enlighten us. So anyone, any parent out here who is
Mm.
looking to, you know, move to Australia and has a sickle cell child, what would be your advice if they're coming over? Because your parents had to move from the UK over to Australia. And what were the changes you found?
I think the most important thing to remember when you have a chronic illness or a child with a disability or chronic illness is to be your own advocate. I remember hearing, as part of the Australian sickle cell advocacy, I hear a lot of people's stories from the United Kingdom, and especially surrounding this whole pandemic. I heard a lot of commentary saying that they were sent letters from the NHS to
Yes,
stay home.
yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
to protect yourself. Over
Mm,
here in Australia, you are a little bit more isolated in that you don't have someone that is kind of looking closely at your case. So
mm,
my advice is always to advocate for yourself. You have to do most of the work. So my mum and dad found me a haematologist here at the Women's and Children's Hospital in Adelaide.
okay.
And that was when my relationship with the team really began. And now, obviously, as an adult, it's my responsibility to make appointments to see my haematologist. Thankfully, here in Australia, we have what is called Medicare. And so if you have a chronic illness that requires attention, most of your treatments are covered. So you're not expected to pay out of pocket for things like blood transfusions and specialist appointments. So I would say to anyone that's moving over here, don't be afraid. The system is fantastic. I'm very, very grateful. It's one of the main reasons why I've chosen to stay in Adelaide. A lot of people regard Adelaide as a kind of retirement country, a little place where you settle down and maybe have a few
That's
kids.
what, yeah, relaxing country, and just relax, you settle down and just forget about the rest of the world, because it's
Yeah,
very,
that's
yeah.
right. So, but you know, having said that, it's the best place to be right now, not only with everything that's going on, but with sickle cell, because I know that I'm in the best hands, and if there are new treatments that become available, I know I have the options to ask for that. So, for example, currently with the blood exchanges that I have, there's always that risk of iron overload. So
Mm.
I currently have iron overload in my liver, and I have to have chelation therapy for that. Now, the chelation therapy costs around $2,000, but thankfully the government covers it here. And so I'm very grateful for that, because I know that a lot of people in other countries
Okay.
do not have that
Yeah.
at all. So yeah, it's definitely something to be very grateful for and very aware of.
Oh, wow, that's really amazing. I mean, to just have that system. How many people in Australia would you say have sickle cell, beta thalassemia, or sickle cell anemia, whatever it is?
I know that I'm the only patient in my hospital that has sickle beta thalassemia. I wouldn't be able to tell you a specific number as to how many people suffer with sickle cell anemia. I do know it's more prevalent in places like Sydney and Melbourne, not so much here in Adelaide. Having said that, there are, as we become more multicultural and as we're seeing a rise in that, I'm sure we're likely to see more cases, and with that, more knowledge and more information about it.
Yeah, so to come to a conclusion, I wanted you to kind of summarize to anyone who's watching this but has kind of lost hope. You are living in a place that you're the only one with the sickle cell beta thalassemia there, but you found hope. You're not worried about it because you become your own advocate. You are a person who has all this, circumstances against you, but refuse to let it define you. You've defined yourself and not worried about what the world thinks of you. What advice, as a young lady, you're still very young, let's be honest. And I look at you and I wish when they say, what would you advise to yourself 10 years ago or 15 years ago? I'll advise myself to have the courage you have, because I'm talking to so many people and I'm just seeing courages that I didn't have at your age. So now I want to put you on the spot. I'm that girl again who was naive, who didn't know anything. And I'm listening to this then as a parent who has a child to deal with in a country that's probably the only one who has that illness. As a young girl who has to go through relationship with this, what advice would you give to your fellow girl, boy, man, woman watching this? Even myself as well. I'm going to listen to this advice because we never stop learning and improving ourselves. What advice?
That's a fantastic question, Anne. Thank you so much for asking it. I think the most important key message to take away is to be true to yourself, to be honest and upfront. I feel a weight lifted off my shoulders the day I decided to stop hiding and pretending to be something that I wasn't. If that meant that my path would be different to everyone else's, then so be it. Because my mum always taught me that there's not one path in life. There could be several. And if I had to give advice to my younger self, it would be to stop trying so hard, because God has given you this body and this life for a reason. And I truly believe that, as much as it's been hard and as much as there have been times when I've laid awake in bed and thought, why me, or why is this happening to me? I truly believe that God has given me this condition to have a voice, to be able to help others. And if I leave this earth knowing that I've helped one person, then that will be enough for me. I would have reached my purpose in life. I think having a purpose in life is the grounding force for success. If you're passionate about something, pursue it as much as you can. And, you know, even if that means not making a living out of it, not making money from it, make sure that you use your voice and your intentions for something that you're passionate about. Because if sickle cell has taught me one thing, it's that life is so short and it's so beautiful. And, you know, you may only experience circumstances where you kind of reflect on life a lot later in life. I know that my grandfather and I actually had this conversation. He's in his 80s and he's feeling quite reflective of his life, and he suffered a broken hip a few years ago. And I remember coaching him through that pain because I understood exactly how he felt. And sometimes I think that pain can really teach us things, and it can teach us to, you know, pursue the things in life that are important and not be so afraid, because at the end of the day, this is the only life we have, and, you know, we have to go for it.
Absolutely. Well, Sophia, I'm so honored to have you this evening in your time and morning here in London. I'm so glad you joined me, and I think we should keep on this dialogue going. And when things changes in your life, definitely let me know so we could talk about that, because I think the more people know, the more you could help. And you're doing so much already in your space, helping as many people as you can. And I appreciate that. And I really want to applaud you and thank you for this beautiful opportunity, for letting me talk to you about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I really am honoured. I'm very inspired by you and your story. And yeah, I want to thank you for sharing this space as well on a global level. I think the work that you're doing is amazing, and it's not something that I've seen from others. It can be very hard, I think, for successful people to share their wealth and their knowledge with the world. And I just think what you're doing is just remarkable and very philanthropic. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and wishing you a lovely rest of the night, whatever you're doing, and we'll definitely catch up soon.